In the shadow of Liverpool Cathedral, two children sleep through what perhaps will turn out to be a seminal moment in their lives. They're moving home, but there's no removal van for their belongings. For destitute asylum seekers, a people carrier is more than enough. The family's leaving the student-style accommodation block they've been staying in for the past fortnight. A place has become available 20 miles away in Warrington. It'll be home while the UK decides whether to accept them as refugees. The minivan is operated by Serco. The government pays the outsourcing giant hundreds of millions of pounds to house thousands of asylum seekers. In the office, departures like these are good news. Accommodation is in short supply. Figures out today show the number housed on the asylum scheme are at a 14-year high.
It's always a concern. At the moment and for the last few months we have been working at capacity and at certain times we do have to move into contingency.
Sorry, what's your name? Are you leaving today?
Serco's Liverpool digs are only ever very temporary housing. They're for asylum seekers who've recently arrived and been accepted onto the scheme.
Have you got your key?
Team leader Daryl needs an interpreter.
Hi, my name's Daryl. I'm a housing officer for asylum seekers in Liverpool. I've got somebody named... can you just advise him that he's going to be leaving in the next 15 to 20 minutes to a property in Chester, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. Between 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, we have a number of people leaving this accommodation to travel across the northwest of England. So they'll be moving to the dispersed accommodation. So we'll be going around making sure that people are packing the bags and getting ready and get on the transport to those properties.
For all the diligence of Daryl and his colleagues, the company he works for is often under fire and has been the focus of demonstrations. Serco is criticised for putting asylum seekers into homes not fit for purpose. It's also accused, along with other contractors, of failing Britain's poorest communities by cherry-picking their cheap accommodation in the pursuit of profit. Serco says this is unfair. It's allowed Newsnight's cameras in to watch its work in action and grill the person in charge.
There are plenty of people in the UK who say private companies shouldn't be involved in this area because you're trying to make profits out of it.
I think it's a very easy thing, private bad, public good. I think that, to have a healthy economy, you need all types of people to be delivering. But in certain services, I think that we are as public-minded as any public sector organisation. And if you've spoken to my people and you've spoken to some of them, I hope you would see they are very vocational people.
I'm just going to do pre-occupancy checks of the rooms. We check to see if any defects with the property.
For 6 years, Serco's Linda Cheeseman has been looking after new arrivals in Liverpool and teaching them a thing or two in the kitchen.
This flat is single male, so it's not always clean.
Linda previously worked in a women's refuge. What does she think of the portrayal of Serco as an outsourcing bogeyman?
At the ground level, we really care. We really care about the people, and we're a great team.
Linda's employers have recently signed a new contract with the government to operate the asylum dispersal scheme over the next 10 years here in the northwest and in England's East and Midlands regions. Housing asylum seekers is big business. The current contracts have cost the taxpayer an average of £242 million a year since 2012. The new 10-year contracts are worth nearly double, £450 million a year. Serco expect to get an average of £190 million a year. It's their biggest ever contract of any kind. They say they lost £100 million over the course of the previous contract.
Do you expect to make profits this time?
Yes, and we absolutely do, because I would be a very bad MD indeed if I didn't expect to. Part of my responsibility is to deliver shareholder value.
But isn't the only way to make profits to drive costs down?
The first way to make profits is to price the service at the correct rate, to make sure that you build in profit, not to drive costs down.
With 40,000 asylum seekers being supported on the scheme across the UK, earlier this month, Newsnight exclusively revealed figures detailing the extent to which they're being clustered in the cheapest parts of some of the UK's most deprived communities. Local politicians in the Midlands and the north of England told us they're taking more than their fair share, and they've threatened to stop letting the likes of Serco house asylum seekers in their areas. Because asylum seekers are by definition a transient population, there exists a cap of no more than one asylum seeker per 200 of the population in a local authority. But if you drill down to ward level, in the Park ward in Yorkshire's Calderdale, for example, it's 1 in 68, in Graiseley and Wolverhampton, it's 1 in 66, and in Etruria and Hanley ward in Stoke-on-Trent, it's 1 in 36.
Local authorities essentially have told us it's because you're looking for the cheapest accommodation, you're trying to drive prices down, so you go for these lowest cost homes in these particular areas, and that causes problems for them.
So there is an element of truth in the fact that we are looking for appropriate accommodation. And as I say, because...
The cheapest?
It's not always the cheapest though. So social housing is at a premium right now. So the amount of the local authority requirement for social housing for homelessness, for instance, has gone up exponentially. We are all looking for the same type of properties, not just us, but everybody who operates in the social housing arena.
The reality is, in terms of the kind of accommodation you're looking for, you're not going to go away and look in expensive areas, which will cost you a lot more to house people, even though they probably have very appropriate accommodation for these people.
Well, we wouldn't be looking in certain areas, not necessarily because of the cost of housing, but because of whether they're an appropriate place to place a family.
This is my home. This is my room.
Unsurprisingly, many asylum seekers Newsnight met did not wish to show their faces on camera, but this woman from Guatemala did.
This is my kitchen.
A year and a half since she joined the asylum dispersal scheme, Sasha Taylor is waiting to hear whether she will be granted refugee status.
I was victim about discrimination and transphobia, and I received a lot of violence. And I think now it's my right to make this place make me happy.
Because she's considered particularly vulnerable, Sasha has her own flat. Most don't. The government's own inspectors have been damning about the state of some of Serco's homes. They inspected nearly 1,700 Serco properties in the northwest of England. 39% were classified as being either in good nick or only requiring routine maintenance. 56% needed repairs termed urgent, ranging from fixing leaky taps to repairing broken windows. 5%, that's 82 properties, were classified as needing emergency repairs within 24 hours to fix problems including ceilings that might cave in or no hot water. And 4 properties needed immediate action. That's for problems such as asbestos, flooding or a gas leak.
We have a whole team of people who are dedicated to providing care and support to very vulnerable people. And I am very proud of what we do. And I know...
So when you see a report like that, you think that is unfair?
I think that some of the reports are contextual. As I say...
You think they got it wrong?
No, I think if you go into a property at a given moment in time and there is a repair that requires delivering, if you don't then look at how long we have to actually make that fix, so as I say, 28 days, 7 days, then maybe reporting it as us not having done our job may not be telling the whole story.
Serco has been stripped of its asylum role in Scotland and Northern Ireland in the new round of contracts.
You're not changing the law!
Last summer, it faced heavy criticism in Glasgow. It earmarked 330 asylum seekers for eviction. The Home Office was no longer paying Serco to provide for them. Lock change notices sparked outrage from some.
All of the 300 that were quoted were people who had remained in our care post the time that the Home Office give them any support.
So why did it become a story that you were trying to change the locks and chuck people out?
Because people don't understand the system, and I think people didn't understand that the individuals that were named, the 300 people who were staying with Serco because Serco had decided to try and help them for a further period of time. But we can't do that forever.
Hello, is it okay?
Okay, can you just make sure that he's taken everything out of his room, he doesn't leave anything behind, and is taking his bedding and dining sets with him, please?
The asylum seeker Daryl's talking to in Liverpool is off to Chester. Its council is one of 129 local authorities across the UK who are currently housing asylum seekers under the scheme. More than 300 aren't. Newsnight understands earlier this week the Home Office met representatives from aggrieved local authorities who feel the burden on them is too great. For months, they've been arguing that too many asylum seekers are being housed in the poorest parts of their regions, leading to community tensions. With billions being paid to the likes of Serco for the asylum contracts over the next 10 years, the Home Office expects them to use some of the extra money to rent more properties away from the cheapest areas. But crucially, they aren't compelled to do so, and the number of asylum seekers needing housing is rising.
Even if every local authority in the country signed up to this scheme, for the people who are in some of the poorest wards in the country, who are in some places complaining, feeling threatened, feeling that their areas changed too much, it's not like it's going to change for them. It's not as if other people signing up, other authorities signing up, are going to mean that they, in those poorest wards, have fewer people.
No, that's true, because we still need more and more housing, so not less housing. So we need to, go to new wards and new areas, because we are not moving, people are not moving on from the accommodation as quickly as people are coming into the accommodation. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. So yeah, we need more and more accommodation.
One person, however, will be moving on. Half an hour after speaking to us, one of our interviewees received news.
My solicitor, she called me for giving me the good news that Home Office, they finally giving me a positive decision, a refugee status that I think is for 5 years stay in UK. That piece of paper giving me a status that can say that now I am safe, my life is safe, my human rights can be the same that every human being. Yeah. Now I know I can live a dignity life as a transgender woman. Yeah. Sorry.
The 18 months Sasha spent on the scheme are a reminder of how slowly the asylum cogs can turn. Only now, as a refugee, can she work, pay taxes and claim benefits. She hopes to be a hairdresser. Meanwhile, some of Britain's poorest communities are struggling with the impact of housing asylum seekers. And there's little sign the extra taxpayer cash going to the likes of Serco will provide them any respite.